they've stopped chatting, to introduce Henning Nielsen, who most of you probably do know him as a member of the Medical Commission of FISA. Following on from that fascinating talk, as a medic, it's always interesting how far can we push ourselves, and you know, are we going to meet these potentials that the scientists talk to us about, or is our body, is the human body going to be the limitation? Are we going to get to a point where we no longer go any faster because actually we start to break down? Henning's about to give you a clinical cardiac case study, which is fairly recent in its history, but it perhaps demonstrates to us, alongside Sanjay Sharma's talk yesterday, that actually we may be getting to the point where we're starting to push ourselves to the point where actually the human body is going to be our limiting factor. Over to you.
Thank you for the nice introduction, and thank you also for the invitation to speak here today. Just a little about myself. I started out as a rower when I was 2 years old. I was always followed my father when he was a coach, and then also I wanted to be a real rower. And in the late 80s, when I was a medical student, I was the pizza boy for some of Niels Segger's experiment. So I had the very important job to collect pizzas for the volunteers and the researchers in the studies. And then I was advancing from medical students or studies until I was a medical doctor. And then I had to find a way to earn my money. And I chose from internal medicine to anesthesia. And from being a very active rower, I earned my money in putting people to sleep, being very passive. Yes. The first slide, please. Maybe I should stand over here. And my talk received the title Cardiac Case Study, maybe to reflect the tragic case we experienced up to the training camp for the Worlds last year in August. Mette, on the left, she had a stroke in the training camp. The morning, August 11, she was paralyzed, unable to speak, and she was found by her teammate. And that caused a little disturbances and panic in the Danish camp. And she's now fully recovered. She's back in full training, and that gave me the task to talk a little about Danish cases in stroke and cardiac arrest. And the question is, could it happen again? Could it happen again to Mette, or could it happen to other athletes? Rowers, they may have the perception that nothing can harm us. We are untouchables in some way. And we are part of evolution. On the other hand, the extreme nature of rowing could also be our worst enemy. And I've collected a few slides about the extreme nature of rowing physiology I've been involved in for the past 20 years or so. And I think a provocative hypothesis is that this extreme physiology, in the extreme case of a person with a sensitive myocardium, could be fatal. And thereafter I will present the Danish cases. Some of these factors could be fatal in the vulnerable athlete. Changes in myocardial structure as presented previously, high blood pressure during rowing, extreme sympathetic activity during rowing, low heart rate in the recovery, also irregular heart rate, hypoxemia and acidosis, hypothermia. We've heard a talk about hypothermia, but also hypothermia in athletes rowing in hot climate. That could be a risk factor. Electrolyte imbalance, dehydration, genetic factors, and oral contraceptives could also be a risk factor. And these factors combined or could be sort of a risk for formation of a blood clot that could lead to a stroke, as in Mette's case. Rowers are tall, big guys and females, and we may have been selected on a sort of Darwinistic trait of travel with large lungs and big hearts. And it's kind of a normal standard finding that during rowing we have a ventilation, very large ventilation, 200 liters, 250 liters, and also big hearts, large or increase in myocardium, but also volume. And that's important for us, otherwise we cannot achieve our goals. And one of the reasons for this adaptation, it's a normal adaptation to rowing physiology, is that at the catch of each stroke, the rower experiences a large increase in blood pressure. This is just doing light rowing, and doing maximal rowing we have measured from a sort of arterial line inserted in the artery that systolic blood pressure is going up to 250 milliliters mercury, and even 300 is measured. And cardiac output is extremely high. This is measured by dye dilution. We had a catheter, just arterial line, but also a central venous line going in, and thereby we could measure the dye dilution determined cardiac output, and it goes up to 30 liters. Extremely high in lightweight rowers, so impressive. And also the stroke volume is very impressive. Hypoxemia and acidosis, even though we have large lungs, in some way large lungs cannot prevent sort of us from oxygenating optimal. This is during rowing. As you can see from the screen on the left, hypoxemia is developed during rowing. Even though we have large lungs, it's not good enough for oxygenation. So during rowing, the oxygen tension is decreased, and also the saturation goes down to 85%. And that's comparable to exercise in hypoxia. And also pH, 6.84, that's the lowest ever measured in human physiology. And if you measured that as a medical doctor and a patient, you would believe the patient is dead. But the rowers just continue, and this is easily easily treated. You just give extra oxygen. If you provide, as we did with Victor here as a world Olympic champion from '96, we put in extra oxygen in these bags here, and then we could easily treat the desaturation. And we increased the oxygen level in arterial blood. And what it made him perform better, he felt better, and going back to Jürgen's question about the brain, we could measure that he actually had more oxygen in his brain. So, interesting. And the low pH could be treated by giving him bicarbonate. During rowing, there's no bicarbonate left in blood to buffer the acid. So if you just give bicarbonate, we infused bicarbonate in a central vein, and we gave 4 times the dose as we normally give to a patient with cardiac arrest. We gave that during 6 minutes, and we could easily reverse acidosis, so we kept pH normal. And what it made him perform better. There was an increase in performance by 2%, and he felt better. He was really feeling good, and all the subjects we had in for the bicarbonate study, they break the personal records in the rowing ergometers. Extreme sympathetic activity. We need sympathetic activity to perform. And this study was just done just for the fun of it, to show that exercise 3 times on a day, repeated 2 days, and then we measured catecholamines, and this is extreme. I think it's the highest values in human physiology ever measured, and it just illustrates that they are really doing an effort, and we really need to have the input from the sympathetic activity. However, a sort of a side effect to sympathetic activity is also that it influences the ability to form a blood clot. And it can be measured by this is called a tick, but the basic concept is that you have a blood sample, and then you put in the blood sample in a machine, and then a pin comes down, and then the pin begins to rotate. And what the machine measures is the resistance to rotation, and that can be measured, or that's translated into a blood clot. So what you can see here, this is rest, and you've got a sort of a normal. This is sort of a measure of the coagulation factors, and as soon a blood clot begins to sort of form around this pin, then you get this nice pattern here, and that's the normal values. During rowing, you have a shorter, so the blood in some way, blood taking out for the subjects during rowing, gets better to coagulate. So the clot is formed quicker, and you get a nice pattern here, but it's larger. And it basically means that the strength of a clot is stronger. We use this machine doing surgery when the patient is bleeding, and that's basically because of the surgeons that cannot do their surgery. And then I have to sort of step in as an anesthesiologist to sort of give some blood. And we have to give the right kind of blood in order to treat a blood loss of 5, 6, 7 liters. And we use this machine to tell us, is it plasma or is it thrombocytes, or is it full blood? So blood taking out from a rower during rowing may sort of, or it indicates that it is better to form a clot. The athlete heart syndrome, we've talked a little about that. This is just a slide showing you the sort of variance in heart rhythm during rowing, and this is taken from an athlete exercising 2 times a day, just to show you the peaks, but also at night it goes down. And there are reports saying that it's a bradycardia during rest or in the recovery may go down to 40, and even 35. And if we have an athlete with a risk of forming blood clots, and you have a slow heart rate, it could be sort of a risk factor for clots in the right atrium, and then a stroke. I do not know, but it's a likely hypothesis. Hypothermia. During rowing, this is a study we did. We put it in a catheter, also a central venous line, with a temperature-sensitive electrode. And as you can see, just under the warm-up, during the warm-up, the heat produced by the massive energy production creates an increase in temperature. And during maximal rowing, they face sort of a core temperature about 39. And I think it went even above that. And electrolytes. During maximal rowing, you have an increase in potassium, 6.2. And also in the patient, if you see a patient with a high potassium, there's a risk for cardiac arrest, and you immediately treat that. And hypothermia, electrolyte imbalance, could be not such a good idea in the lightweight. So this is a picture taken from the Amsterdam Regatta in '88. I was sitting in the bow without a hat and much more hair, and the 3 other guys was in rain suits. We had to lose 2 kilos each, and it was Alan is shaking his head. That was how we did it in those days, in the '80s, and so should we be concerned about can sort of a stroke happen again? Yeah, it could be. and we need to sort of advise our athletes on how we train and also pick the athletes with the sort of risk profile. So in terms of heat stroke, I think this is a slide from Alan's presentation saying that there might have been a few cases about sudden death in rowing. It could be heat stroke, arrhythmia, electrolyte imbalance. And this is the 5 cases I think Alan has sort of located in the literature. And the 2 one is lightweight rowers, heat stroke, and then it's cardiac arrhythmias. And that's fatal when it happens, and in some way we need to find methods to sort of pinpoint or locate the athletes with the high risk. And one of the rare sort of diseases, cardiac diseases, it does also occur in rowers. This is RAVD. Some of you may know the disease. Basically it's not a disease. It's a syndrome where the right ventricle is dilated, and for some reason there are fat infiltration in the right ventricle, and that causes electrolytes or electrical disturbances that might cause, again, ventricular arrhythmias and sudden cardiac death. This is what I've found on the internet. It's a Canadian rower who, by the age of 20, during a rowing race, collapsed and nearly died. So it's kind of a case story also, but it can happen, and it can happen to everybody, because this is probably a consequence of myocarditis. And that's a disease that we do not feel, but just suddenly appears. Yes, RAVD is also seen in Danish patients. I just did this study just to collect the data from the patient, and what's got me into this sort of study was patient number 27. And I did hold this, so it took me 3 years to do it, but what sort of attracted me or fascinated me was that patient number 7 was a rower. And what caused this disease was probably a myocarditis, and symptoms were provoked during rowing. And this is just showing the strange thing about this syndrome. You get abnormal ECGs, you get a dilated right ventricle, and you got fat infiltration. You can see a lot of the patients have fat infiltrations. So it's a rare disease, but it can happen, and it might cause sudden cardiac death in our athletes. That was just a normal patient, but that's one of the sort of more famous case studies in Danish sport. This is this guy, Ståle Solbakken, a Norwegian guy, a football player. He played in the FCK, that's part of the top 3 football clubs in Denmark, Copenhagen Football Club. And during a training session, he collapsed, had a cardiac arrest, and was admitted to the hospital. He survived, luckily. No side effects. He got an ICD implanted and stopped from playing football. And now he works as a professional coach. He was in Germany, and I think he's now back in the Copenhagen Football Club as the super coach. Another famous Danish athlete, this is Enya Aniston. She's a famous handball player in Denmark, one of the most famous female athletes in Denmark. 1996, she won an Olympic gold medal with the Danish handball team, and she was diagnosed with the ventricular beats and got a ICD implanted. But she continued to play handball, and during a handball game live on TV, she collapsed and had a sort of a cardiac arrest and was saved by this ICD. She stopped from playing handball, and then she turned into coaching, and she's still coaching today. The recent story, we had 2 strokes in Danish sport last year. And one is Stine, a shooter, trying to qualify for the Olympic team in Rio. November last year, she had a stroke. And she received thrombolysis, you know, medication that dissolved the clot. And she is recovered completely, back in training. Then we have Mette, our rower, August 11 in the training camp, found by her teammate. And she's also recovered completely, almost completely. And that's kind of a miracle. Both these great girls, they were nominated to receive the award prize, Denmark Olympic Hope, at a big award show transmitted to television directly, and they were on the podium. They did not win. There was a kayak rower who won the sort of prize, but in my mind it should have been Mette, but that's how it is. And this is Mette on sort of the nice blue dress and her teammate Lisbeth at the award show. So Monday 11 August, and 3 days after the event, this picture on the left was out in big Danish newspapers. It was on the internet, and as you can see, the Danish headline is translated, Mette found unconscious in back. It was highlight news on TV, on newspaper. It was caused a lot of emotions. And Mette is not sort of normal athletes. She had a sort of a career, ongoing career, and she's got also a curriculum with participation in European championships, and also she came second at the World Cup here in Eton in 2013, and she was extremely fit and also extremely enthusiastic in making the final and also trying to qualify for a medal in the final. And on the right, you can see World Rowing had this announcement on the internet that the change of events brings Rasmussen back, Mads Rasmussen, who won the Olympic gold medal in 12. And this stroke caused a lot of panic, and it made us to do some tragic or dramatic changes in our team. And that's how it is when something like that happens. So what we know, or I do not know sort of her medical records, so this is what I know from the press and what I could sort of take out from all the messages or on the internet, the newspapers and interviews from television, for example. Mette, she is 25 years of age, normally and healthy, extremely fit, talented, well-educated female. She is extremely skilled in music. Before her career in sport, she was trying to come into the music world. She's extremely skilled with piano. And then she switched to exercise science. She qualified for the double with Lisbeth for the Worlds in 2014. Sudden stroke in the training camp. She was paralyzed. She was unable to speak. She couldn't speak, and she was found by her teammate. They have this routine, this routine when they are on training camp together, that Mette usually stays in bed. She's not very easy to get out of the bed. So Lisbeth, her routine is just to go down to the breakfast, and then usually Mette is coming down. And Lisbeth couldn't sort of, it was strange, why didn't Why didn't Mette come down? So she went back to the room and began to talk to Mette, and she didn't respond. And she was just lying there, paralyzed, and couldn't do anything. She couldn't communicate. And then that creates some tension and activity around the team. Mette, she was immediately transferred to a a specialized hospital, and there was no medical history and no family history at all. What I've been told is that on the CT scan, when a patient is coming in with a clot, you normally do a CT scan with a contrast type of thing you inject, and then you can see sort of the changes in the brain. And what I've been told is that 1/3 of Metta's brain was affected, and that is why she was paralyzed and unable to speak. They started heparin immediately, and there was a lot of talk forth and back. I called the insurance company, Lars called the hospital, and we tried to sort of put a pressure around the system, but they couldn't sort of provide thrombolysis, the intravenous stuff that could dissolve a clot, because the time frame from start of symptoms, there was kind of uncertainty when did the symptoms start, and sort of when. So I think the maximal time frame is 3 hours, 6 hours, 3 hours, and due to the uncertainties about sort of how long has this been going on, they felt it was not a good idea to give the medication. Immediately on day 1 after the stroke, we decided to start intensive physiotherapy. So we agree with our team physiotherapist, Anders, to be with her every day. 1-2 hours. It's not me. It's not him. Nope. Another Anders. Another Anders. To be with her every day. Stay at the hospital 1-2 hours to build up a relationship, a confidence, and just start with small exercises to sort of provoke the brain to find different sort of patterns for the thinking to the activity. And it took us 2 weeks to get her to Denmark. Until the transportation, the insurance, was a nightmare. But we succeeded to get something arranged so she could come to Denmark. There was started oral anticoagulation. You might know these drugs. And still, there was no sort of clear cause of what caused this stroke. This is not Metta's brain, it's just a textbook picture. So, in Denmark, when we had Mette back again, she was living with her boyfriend, Jannik, who was also part of the rowing team. He's rowing in the quad at that time. So he was also extremely nervous and anxious and felt deep emotions about his girlfriend. But Mette decided to move into her parents to get her help to sort of basic things, basically. And we intensified the rehabilitation. When Mette, she was in the Danish hospital, there are, when you are in a public hospital, there are certain rules, and you get a certain kind of service, and you cannot demand much, right? That's how it is. And it was a bit difficult to make agreement with the public hospital that we had this extremely good, talented rower who needed extremely good care and extremely good sort of attention by our physiotherapist. But he was allowed to come in and be with her every day, a few hours, and then we sort of build it up sort of the rehabilitation. The cardiologists were extremely interested. So what caused this sort of stroke? They couldn't come up with anything. There have been genetic testing, echo, Holter monitoring is a sort of a tape recorder that can monitor the heart rate. Nothing. Came up with nothing. We started cognitive rehabilitation. The plan was to sort of go with the physical build-up and then start with the cognitive, because she was unable to speak. She couldn't sort of mobilize the words, and she's still got some small difficulties in doing long sentences. So we started that approximately 1 month after the stroke. And since September 9, a month after the stroke, she uploaded this picture on the Facebook profile, just to indicate that she could move her limbs again. She determined to sort of come back. Already 2-3 weeks after the stroke, she said, I want to come back. I will compete in Rio. And we were a bit anxious not to take the hope from her, but in some way we also inspired her to have sort of the flame in her, or the ambitions, and that was kind of her main goal, to come back. November 1st, she gave this interview on TV, and although it's in Danish, I think you should see it. That's kind of and you get the impression how she was in October. You can please put it on.
Mandag den 11. august er en dag, som landsholdsroeren Mette Dyrlund aldrig glemmer.
What she says is it's a day Mette never forgets, August 11.
Pause. Men nu er hun på vej tilbage til sporten og til livet. For første gang fortæller hun sin historie.
Back in the sport, she's back in life.
25-årig Mette Dyrlund står på kanten. Bag hende er en dag, hun aldrig glemmer.
It's a day she never forgets.
Jeg lam, og jeg kan ikke bevæge mig.
I was paralyzed.
Foran hende ligger alt det, hun elsker.
Ja, jeg kan rigtig godt lide ro, og jeg kan.
I love row.
Jeg vil gerne have mål.
I would like to have goals.
Det var romakkeren Lisbeth Falk Jacobsen, der fandt Team Danmark-roeren livløs på deres fælles hotelværelse.
The team may find her.
Jeg finder hende i sengen sådan lidt omtog.
Paralyzed.
Svært ved at komme i kontakt med hende.
I couldn't come into contact with her.
Jeg finder så ret hurtigt ud af, at der er et eller andet. Der er helt galt.
Something was wrong.
Og helt galt var den med Mette Dyrlund. Hun var ved bevidsthed, men var lammet og kunne ikke tale.
Jeg er ikke bange, fordi jeg er Mette.
I was not afraid.
Jeg er normal.
I am Mette. I am normal. That was her thinking.
Først nu er de
on
to
the morning
igen
August 11.
at tage favntag med rosporten for alvor.
Jeg vil rigtig gerne ro stærkere end før.
I will compete again. I will row faster than before the stroke.
Jeg er en person med mod på livet. Det er helt imponerende, som du bare kan gå derudad, gå efter dit mål og sige, okay, sket er sket. En blodprop, ved du hvad?
Done is done.
Det er jeg fuldstændig ligeglad med.
Blood clot was a blood clot. Now we have to move
har Mette
forward.
Dyrlund styrketrænet flere gange dagligt.
Jeg tror, at det motiverer os, for nu skal vi skal bare OL-kval og OL.
We need to go to Rio.
OL-flammen brænder kraftigere på grund af ulykken.
På en eller anden måde, så er Mettes motivation, det motiverer også mig.
Mettes motivation have sort of inspired me to be a better athlete. Lisbeth is saying.
Så må det give det gør. jeg tror, at det er stærkere end før.
I think my drive to compete is stronger than before the clot.
Og en indopereret chip holder øje med hendes hjerterytme.
Skynd dig til Elgiganten!
Commercial. And in December, there was this interview in a sports magazine. It's a wonderful sort of interview, and in this interview, she's quoted to say, "I will achieve my goals. I will row in Rio." She's still improving. This iPhone. Could you please start the? This iPhone video is taken last week. This is our ergometer room, and she is training with her teammate Lisbeth on the left. And as you can see, she is almost without any kind of side effects to this blood clot. Still have some difficulties with her right hand, but that's basically it. And Lisbeth is in a dark blue suit. Just to show you how remarkable and this athlete is. returning from sort of being paralyzed, unable to speak, and now she's training full time, full capacity, more determined than ever. So, still, we do not know what caused the blood clot in Mette, or even though also Stine, but it could be a mix of factors of sort of bad cases some way. The day before the clot, August 10, they've been training extremely hard in hot, humid climate. So hypothermia, electrolyte imbalance, low heart rate, possible hypothesis, we do not know. So something happened there, but this is just to say that the FISA have determined to do a pre-participation screening. I think it's a good idea, and it can help the sort of athlete to balance the concern for health, the concerns for training, and also balance the sort of different angles from sports scientists, the coaches, but also ambitions. And that, I think, can help sort of the athlete to come into contact with the medical doctors. And if a stroke happens, then we cannot rely on the public health system. I'm sorry to say it. We have to do something special for these athletes. Athletes are not sort of normal persons. They are not normal patients if sort of a tragic case like this comes into sort of our attention. Yep, that was my sort of contribution, I hope. Thank you.